This second conversation tonight is an utter privilege to host because Sharmila Tagore, I mean, it begs the question, who is Sharmila Tagore? Because there are so many answers. She is, of course, one of the most seminal actresses in Indian cinema, not just in Hindi cinema, but with a 5-decade career that spans both range, scope, styles. However, she has been and continues to be so much more. She has been, for 6 years, the chairperson of the Indian Censor Board. She has been on the Cannes Film Festival jury. She is a Padma Bhushan awardee. She has been wife to one of the most legendary Indian cricket captains ever. She presides over a superstar family, superstar son, superstar daughter-in-law, and now certified bona fide superstar toddler grandson. How many people in this country can say they span not just over a career or a life or a legacy, but an entire way of living? It is an absolute privilege to invite on stage Sharmila Tagore, but before that, a glimpse of one aspect of her life, her work, that we think you'll enjoy. May we have the film, please? Nobody would say, Sharmila ji, looking at that video, that you were a reluctant actress.
Well, first let me say that how thrilled I am to be in Hyderabad and meeting all of you here. Because I remember when I just met Tiger, we used to come here because you know Tiger played for Hyderabad,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So it was kind of very special place. So it's really special to come here. And thank you for showing that. I got up about 3 times thinking that it's over, but it just carried on.
For a career that spanned over 50 years, we were barely starting.
And I couldn't get over the response. You know, you said this, that, and the other. And when you mentioned Taimur, there was sort of a genuine kind of an applause. So that was very interesting. Yeah, sorry.
So you said, or I believe you've said, that you were a reluctant actress to start. Where did that reluctance come from?
I wouldn't say, because you see, when I started, I was 13. So there was no question of reluctance or anything. I would say I was an accidental actress because I was just a student and Shotajit Rai. And I love the way you have interspersed Ray with Bollywood. So that was very well done. A bit like my life, yes. And so he was looking for this very young girl for the last of the trilogy, which still makes the first 100 best films in the world every year. And it still carries on, and it just celebrated, Opur Sangshar celebrated 60th, just 1 week ago or something like that. But anyway, he was looking for this young girl, and he had advertised in the papers, and those days working in films was very bad. I mean, nobody wanted to work in films from a good family. But Tinku, my sister, had already worked in Kabuliwala, so he thought that this family probably would be less problematic. So he approached us, my father. So hardly reluctant, but of course it was not even anywhere in my imagination that I would be working in films. But I'm glad I did. It changed my life. And the opposition came from the school. The school said, we don't want you because you'll be a very bad influence on the other girls. So I was shown the door, but I'm glad that happened because it's absolutely changed. So not reluctant, but accidental, yes.
But you mentioned, and I'm first going to ask for forgiveness of my pronunciation of Opur Sansar because I am not Bengali.
Opur Sangshar.
Opur Sansar. It was, of course, a seminal film in your life, but you know, Ray has been discussed, Satyajit Ray is discussed all the time in every context of filmmaking. And I think his public genius is acknowledged. But I'd love to know, what were the private strands that he showed to his actors and to people on set that made him, in your eyes, a remarkable filmmaker?
Well, as I said, I was only 13 when I met him. So he was kind of a very huge paternal figure.
Physically also.
Physically he was starring, and he had a very booming voice, but somehow there was a twinkle in his eyes, and he would come very close to you. Being a tall person, I being a very short and not introduced to heels then, so he would somehow make eye contact and just narrate the scene. And we were not allowed, we were all given hand-bound script with images on the side. You know, all the frames were etched by his own hand. They're absolute treasures. So he would just narrate and we were not encouraged to memorize the dialogues or do any kind of workshop at all because we were young and not professional. So he thought that would be detrimental. So he. That's
so you
how
were
he
not
worked.
encouraged to learn the dialogues?
Not at all. And he somehow, and of course, there was no film. I mean, we worked in a shoestring budget. So usually it would be the first take or the second take, and that's it, brilliant, next shot, that kind of thing. And he changed the landscape of Indian cinema. This I'm saying now, not at the age of 13 and 14. I sort of just sat quietly and followed orders.
But was there a sense at that time of being, so you may not have had a context for other directors or other filmmakers, but was there a sense of being in a special setting?
Otherwise, I wouldn't have been there. My parents would not have allowed me to work in any other kind of film because Shotyajit Ray at that time was winning awards, international awards. He was considered a wonderful director, somebody very special to work with. That's why I was allowed to work with him. And yes, one felt, later when I see Opu Shangshar or Arunnidin Ratri and Devi followed Opu Shangshar instantly, like I was 13 when I was working in Opu Shangshar, and Devi I was 14. And that remains my favorite film. And
You've
the
said
most
it was a seminal
complex
film.
character, yes.
So will you tell us a little about why that special relationship with Devi?
To an audience who's not seen Devi, it's a challenge. Because do you really want to hear about Devi? Because you probably will get terribly bored. But it was set against the late half of the 19th century when the confrontation between the orthodox, Hindu orthodoxy and the rational reformist, it was at that point, it was very intense, that kind of confrontation. So that was the backdrop of the film, and he chose a rich zamindar family to tell his story. And the patriarch of the family is a Kali worshipper, and Kali, who's a destroyer as well as creator, and he's absolutely blind about his faith. And his son, Uma Shankar, is more informed by the rationalist thinkers of that time, but hasn't got the courage or the gumption to defy his father's authority or to challenge his blind faith. And the eldest daughter-in-law, who's somewhere in the middle, she is intelligent, educated, and even compassionate, but cannot shake off the orthodox conditioning. And Doyamoi, the character that I play, Uma's wife, becomes a tragic victim in this drama, where she is a very young person, illiterate, and so one night the patriarch of the family dreams that she is the goddess incarnate and thinks that she is a goddess. So he comes, as is sort of a blind faith, he comes and knocks on her door, and she opens it, and he falls at her feet in abject surrender, calling her Ma. So you can imagine a girl who has been brought up in the absence of a husband who's in Calcutta for higher education, and who has been taught to care for the husband's family and their needs more than her own, and can never contemplate that the father-in-law, the patriarch, the head of the family can ever be wrong. And yet his falling at her feet is so brutalizing, and she sort of shrinks within, and it's pure cinema the way he depicts that particular scene. And then, of course, she starts being worshipped and completely alienated from everything that is known to her. And she's not capable without her husband to assert her will to survive, her survival abilities kind of. So she's too timid, and this kind of endless, relentless worshipping kind of destroys her mind, and then it's too late, and she just becomes a victim.
And it is, in fact, interesting because she's not a victim of conventional form of neglect or torture. She's a victim of being hallowed out of her normal life.
Yes, and that is what and there is a wonderful, powerful scene in that film where she's given an opportunity to run away with her husband who comes to rescue her. And she's unwilling to take that chance because she cannot let go of the myth that has been imposed on her about reincarnation. And she says, it's a very tragic thing that she says, she cannot reclaim her identity. And she says, supposing I'm Devi, and suppose something terrible happens to you, how can your father, who's so learned, be so wrong? So she gives that up, and he goes away, and she comes back, and then finally she becomes insane and disappears in the mist. It's really very cinematic, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film. But what I like about the film, why I treasure it so much, because I feel that it's so relevant even today, that this paralysis of rational thought that traps women in this kind of patriarchal setup. And so many people, scores of women, in the name of honor, tradition, culture, family, continues to suffer. So I think that way, it is so relevant.
And I think you've said, and you were very incisive when you said it's not. In this case, she's also a victim of her own conditioning, which is even worse, because she doesn't register her agency.
Yeah, because so many women do not even realize who they really are and what they want to be. So I think that sentence was so tragic. And as Ray's biographer, Andrew Robinson, says, it is the humans who create and recreate gods, and it's the humans who decide whether it's for the benefit of mankind or not. And as long as religion continues to perpetuate ignorance and superstition and not understood, it's the tolerant, compassionate, progressive quality, as long as that quality continues to elude mankind, Devi will remain a must-watch for anyone who loves good cinema.
And for anyone in this audience who hasn't, I would urge you, in fact, if Sharmila ji's words aren't, that it is a seminal film that deserves more watching today maybe than when it was made. Before we move from Ray to your move to Hindi cinema, I'd still like to understand, you've said that he had a unique cinematic vision and a unique way of explicating that vision. Would you tell us a little about what you found unique, both in his vision and his execution?
See, before he came on the scene, Bengali cinema was quite different. The dialogues, for instance, were very bookish, very theatrical. The performances were very theatrical. There was an orchestra playing in the background. So he changed all that. The dialogue became colloquial, like we talk, and sometimes bilingual, Bengali English, like how we speak. Then the sound that he used were everyday normal sound, like radio playing in the neighborhood, or a tap, the water tip-tapping on the thing, or a distant car horn. So that, he would create that kind of ambience.
And we take it for granted now, but it had never been done before.
So he's the one that started off, say, Shyam Benegal and all the directors who are directing now. I mean, this is a wonderful time for Hindi cinema, are influenced by that kind of. They may not know that they're influenced by, because culture travels in various ways. And, like water, it goes here and there. But he has influenced a generation of filmmakers. So there are many things. I mean, one can carry on talking about him for 3 hours, but he was very special. And like I said, that particular dream sequence, but the memory game in Days and Nights of the Forest, the opening scene in Charulata, the bored housewife, the last sequence of Shima Bodho, So all were very, very cinematic and very new for that time. And yet he was a great storyteller, and all his films ran to a packed house, except for Devi and Kapurush. I think 2 films that didn't do well at the box office, but otherwise he made money.
So your move from Bengali cinema and from the Ray world of cinema to more mainstream Hindi cinema was considered radical, and it was, I think there were raised eyebrows.
All the
and
Bengalis were very shocked.
there was a sense of
And they were
betrayal.
very, very, yes. How can our girl go to Bombay
Why did our girl go to Bombay?
to do these song and dance films? Yes.
So what were you missing about the song and dance films that you weren't able to do?
I thought, to me, I don't know, I was always allowed to make choices. And I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I was slightly mad and slightly spontaneous, and I don't know, really didn't think so much about it, but I just felt that from regional cinema to go to the national scene would be the normal progression, and I think that's why. And also there was a Bengali connection. Shakti Samanta, who directed the film, was Bengali. The writer Sachin Bhaumik was a Bengali, and a lot of Bengali, there was a lot of Bengali presence at that time in Bollywood, like Bimal Roy and Rishikesh Mukherjee and many others. So I guess that was another reason.
But after, so the first film was Kashmir Ki Kali. How was that experience, and did that trigger you to want to do more, or were you done with that first film?
That's when I became very reluctant, I remember, because I had a huge crush on Shashi Kapoor, and I had seen
we will come to this. There's interesting stories around this.
Before I had gone there, I just seen Prem Patra, and couldn't sleep for 3 nights or something. So I was like,
because of his very curly eyelashes.
Very curly eyelashes. So that was, and anyway, so I went to work for Kashmir Ki Kali. The first day's shooting was in Kashmir, in the Dal Lake, and Ashaji was there, and O.P. Nair was there, and they welcomed me, and I was like stiff as a ramrod, because I thought it was so difficult to do this lip syncing to a song, which in Bengali films we've never done. So it was there, I was trying so hard to be natural and all that. But now when you look back, it seems very innocent. But there I was trying to be very sexy, and but that wasn't, well, it didn't come out quite like that. But then Shashi came to see when Isharo Mein was happening on the studio, and he was my fan because he had seen Upur Shanshar. So, and I just couldn't work. I mean, I just was paralyzed. So Shakti had to say, would you please leave and, let us work. So that was my introduction to Shashi Kapoor. And then I saw the rushes. And I said, God, that's really awful. Because Eastman color, because everything was color. So it was like really colorful, red lips, black eyes, everything. And it was like, I said, God, that's really bad. So this is going to be my last film, and I'll go back. So after that, it's been many last films, but I still stayed back. So that's when I became reluctant.
So what changed after that, and what value of more mainstream Hindi cinema made you stay, and not just stay, but rule?
I actually enjoyed it was a different kind of, it was not like a Bengali film or any other regional film, Marathi films, because there you have a very, your own audience. Everybody is the same. You're speaking the same language, you're dressing the same way. So there is many areas where you connect. Whereas in Hindi films, everybody is doing their own thing. The maidservant is dressed differently. And my time, because India, probably every state was quite unique and different. And Hindi films wanted to have a pan-India image. So they would not I wouldn't be Sharmila Tagore. I would be Sharmila. And it wouldn't be, so there wouldn't be any surname. So they didn't want to be Punjabi or Bengali, or they wanted to have a Mr. Dilip or Miss Deepika, So it was a different kind of time. And it was quite exciting to work. And of course, the money was very, very good because it helped me to pay my rent. So that was another. But more than that, to have this a pan-Indian image or a status.
I think
was
you mentioned
interesting.
somewhere that you encountered somebody from South Africa who said,
Which was, like I was always a little apologetic, I earn and I work and I'm a working person, because those days working persons were really, really looked down upon.
women.
I mean,
but yeah,
women.
yeah.
Because as you would have seen
Sorry,
in
sir, but I've heard that ringtone.
Ritik Ghatak's films, is all about, or even Mrinal Sen's film, that how, although they liked the money, but they didn't like their women to work. And to work in Hindi films was the pits. So that was, so I was always a little apologetic about it, till I went to South Africa years later, when we could. In 94, we were allowed to go. And all these people came and told me that, you were our only contact to India. Because at that particular time, Sharmila Tagore was very popular and was on the screen in that 60s and early 70s and late 50s. Anyway, so they said we used to dress up with our best dresses and go and watch your film every Sunday morning. So I said, how wonderful. Look at the reach and the influence of Indian cinema and the goodwill that it creates the world over.
And just to be able to bring joy and connection.
Bring joy, yes. So I thought that was terrific. So there are many other things, other connections, and also the Hindi films have a different way of communicating. They get their point across. No matter what the CBFC is doing, whatever, they get their point across. And those days, of course, we got these roles because crying was the best thing a woman could do. So we were wringing our hands in copious tears, and the vamp had a lot of fun because she was wearing wonderful clothes and, doing all kinds of things.
By the way, you said somewhere else, and this actually connects back to Ray, you said sometimes in a Hindi film you were told, think you're a flower and that you're wilting.
Yeah.
And she said, how do you think you're a flower? So I think you said
because I never really gave up national or Bengali films. Every now and then I went back because I remember when I was working in Aradhana and I had to go to Darjeeling to shoot for Mere Sapno Ki Rani Kab Aayegi Tu, and Shakti ji had the dates, and Shotajit Rai called me and said, I want you for days and nights in the forest. So without thinking, I said yes. And then, of course, that meant I had to get out of Shakti's dates. And Shakti was pulling out his hair. He said, I've got Rajesh Khanna's dates, and what do you mean? And I said, please, I have to. I can't say no to Ray. So I went off and did his film. And they had to do my bit in the studio, which was a huge compromise. And if it hadn't been a hit, it was a huge hit, right? Yeah. So I was forgiven. Otherwise, I would have been just chucked out by Shakti. So what was I saying? Something you'd asked me earlier.
I think your answer was more interesting than my question.
No, what was that question?
I said it was the brands of cinema required.
So there were continuously, this was the question I was asked, since I didn't give up. I was working in Bombay films and in Bengal. When I was working in a Bengali film, they'll say, this is not a Hindi film. So do you mind thinking and reacting a little bit and then answer? And then when I worked in a Bombay film, they'll say, this is not a Ray film. Could you speed it up a little bit? So in one word, this is the... Yeah.
But in fact, that also leads me to my next question, which is that you straddled in Ray films. You were intense and you were smoldering and you were, very
smoldering.
Quiet. Smoldering, absolutely. Okay. Those images, your eyes did the talking.
Yeah.
And then in Hindi movies, everything did the talking, right? It was all out there, right?
I don't know what that means.
You were larger than life. There's hands, eyes, mouth, everything. Yeah. And that's you were playful and often more whimsical. You were seductive in a far more open way. And then there is, of course, you, the very elegant and the very refined Begum of Patodi.
I'm no longer the Begum of Patodi, Karina is.
So the mother Begum then.
Yes.
But Is there a real Sharmila Tagore? Are they all Sharmila Tagore? Am I going to be able to ask an algebra-like question and say which percentage is more Sharmila?
No, obviously. I mean, when you're performing, you're playing a procession of characters, right? So there is a little bit of me and a little bit of the other character. Together, we create a third image. So, no, I think there's a little bit of me in all that. It is me at the end of the day. It is self. And those are not roles. Those are actually division of 24 hours, which is very tough at the end of the day because we didn't even have cell phones, you know.
And you used to work shifts.
We used to work double shift because money was not in place. So we used to do these laborers shift, 7 to 2, 2 to 10. So you would have noticed this long nails where it should not be. So now people can become fat and become thin and grow beard, not women, but etc., etc. So they can change their image. You couldn't because we were 5 or 6 films at a time because the money was not in place. So now everything is so much better and people are working differently. It's more professional. So you know, you had to manage time. I don't know how I did it. If you asked me to tell you that exactly how it happened, I couldn't. But somehow it happened because I wanted to, as I've said often, eat my cake and have it too, because I wanted to. I could not think of giving up a career. I couldn't be a stay-home mother, and nor could I be just a career person, because you know, it comes back to this Anne-Marie Slaughter, you know, women can't have it all, and it's unfinished business. So we are still at it, how to do this, because we don't have house husbands, but we still have to perform the housewifely dues. So that's a lot, because I've always followed the family goal as opposed to individual goal. That was my way of dealing with it, because it doesn't, you cannot fit a job in a family priorities, really, you cannot. Again, it's Anne-Marie Slaughter, not mine. So it is a problem, and having a child is a huge financial risk for a working woman, but we do that. And an adult memory is retentive. So you can not see each other for 3-4 months and make it up in 3-4 days.
But,
whereas a child memory is not retentive. So you
to
have
see.
to be there when they need you. So don't ask me to repeat how it happened, but it's happened, and I did have
and
managed
by
to
all
raise
accounts,
3
it's
kids.
happened spectacularly well.
Well, a
So-
bit of luck and a lot of help from Tiger.
So coming exactly to that question, because, well, first, of course, is the fact that your relationship and then your marriage with Tiger was like the coming together of 2 Indian religions, right?
Yes,
So-
in India, cricket and cinema.
Yeah.
I mean, we are passionate about both.
Yeah. So, and long before Anushka was blamed for distracting Virat, you were blamed for being the reason, I think in a particular Eden Gardens test.
Absolutely, you must have done your research so well. I mean, I mean, the bongs are excitable, and you know, when it comes to cricket, they're quite crazy. But my father, about 3-4 rows away, you must have kept him awake all night. I said, excuse me? I mean, where did that come from? Yeah, so that's happened.
But Tiger, he came from, of course, a royal family. And the idea not just of a working wife, but an actress in the movies, also incidentally, I think the first woman to wear a bikini in mainstream Hindi cinema. How did that go down with his family?
It was not in the cinema. It was a filmfare cover.
On the filmfare
Yeah,
cover.
and it was quite it's created
caused a stir.
I mean, now it's become very cult and all that, but then it was not. It
And
was
again, I'd
hugely
just like
frowned
to
upon.
ask, because you say now it's become cult, what was your impulse in doing it?
I thought I looked great in it. But when I saw the reaction, I wasn't very happy. And so I was quite, upset, really, because they were quite shocked. And Shakti sort of called me to his house and gave me a lecture and all that. And then Tiger was in London, so he sent me a telegram those days. Remember the telegram days? I don't know you remember or not. So he said, don't worry, I'm sure you're looking very nice. So that was the support I needed. And thank God now that died down.
So what did draw you to Tiger? I mean, you worked with some of the most famous men in the land, some of the most beautiful men in the land, including the man with the eyelashes. What did it for you about Tiger Pataudi?
I don't know, I was always cricket mad, not cinema mad that way. And I don't know, I don't know, it's a kind of chemistry I don't think anybody can quite explain or analyze, or algebra percentage, as you say. So it just happened. And the guys in films were much older. They were all, I mean, hugely older. There was the thing, no? The women had to be very young and sprightly and, innocent and sexy at the same time. But men could be, with girth. Now they're going to the gym and looking after themselves. But now, so I don't think they were that hot shot.
But on that note, because you did work with, I mean, every name that counts in Hindi cinema, so Dharmender and of course Rajesh Khanna, Sanjeev Kumar, Amitabh Bachchan. Tell us a little, and what were their unique personalities off screen? Are there any incidents or moments that you feel tell their story much better than who they were on screen?
And I can tell you about on screen, because as I said, it was division of 24 hours. So off screen, my only way of managing 24 hours was not to involve myself so much with film personalities. So I just cut down on interviews. I cut down on attending film premieres. That wasn't understood very well because that was the networking zone. But so I didn't network very much, but things came my way anyway. So I can't tell you. Sanjeev and Shashi I was quite friendly with. I'll tell you about Mausam. My first day as the other girl, the sex worker. What was it? Chameli, Champa. What was her name? I forget. Something.
You will know better than I.
So I was all keyed up. And I was working in the morning, 2 to 10. 7 to 2 I was somewhere. So 2 o'clock I came. And I got ready in about half an hour. And then we waited and waited and waited. And Sanjeev Kumar walks in at 8 o'clock in the evening. And by that time, I was livid. So I told him all kinds of things. Whatever came to my bong dictionary, I let him have it. I said, you're like this, you're like that. And Gulzar sort of kept very quiet and, everybody's pin drop silence. And no reaction from Sanjeev. No reaction, Haribhai, as we called him, absolutely deadpan. And then after about an hour of, venting, Gulzar Saab said, can we please take one shot at least? So I said, okay. So we started working and I gave retakes after retakes after retakes and nothing happened to this idiot. He was all right. And so, I learned my lesson. So after that, I just stopped. In the morning, I was working with him in Farrar. In the evening, I was working with him in Mausam. So I just stopped talking to him, and we carried on. Then I went and saw Aadhi, and I liked him. So in Farrar's, his dressing room was next to mine, so I walked up to him. Knocked on the door, went in. I said, Hari bhai, if you want to be late, just can you ring me up and let me know that you're coming late? So there was a truce and we made up. Because all those actors then, it was their entitlement. We used to be with all our hair and especially my bouffant and everything. I would be ready at 9 o'clock and they would amble in at 11 o'clock, 11:30, everyone except Shashi Kapoor. And Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan being an insomniac, he would come at 6 o'clock in the morning before
your bouffant was in place.
Yes. So, yeah.
And you said Shatrughan Sinha in particular was...
Shatrughan Sinha was another story. Even when he was the health minister, he would be biologically capable of being on time. At his wedding, he came late. Yeah, so, he is like that. So, he would be sitting, and there was one film called Dostana, which Raj Khosla made with a poor fellow. I mean, there was Amitabh Bachchan, Shatrughan Sinha, and Zeenat Aman. And I happened to be shooting at Mehboob Studio those days. And it was, say, 7 to 2 shift. And 2 o'clock, Amitabh's car would be going out, and Shatru's car would be coming in. So in that film, if you see closely, you won't find 3 of them in the same shot. So there was always over. So poor Raj Khosla, those days there was no hair transplant, but he lost all his hair. So that's Shatru for you.
Coming back to Tiger,
Yeah.
was he ever insecure about the fact that you spent 3 shifts with 3 gorgeous men?
Yeah.
Whether they were late or on time is immaterial. There were 2 or 3 men of, like I said, women of the world were kind of lusting after them, and there they were on screen with you. How did he deal with this?
Well, I think he had a great sense of self, so I don't think that was a problem. And he always pointed out to me, there are many actors out there and many super actors out there, but there's only one cricket captain. So that was his answer.
And he never had a jealous moment?
No, I don't recall, really. We had, as it is, very little time, so we didn't want to waste it.
But tell us about the 2 of you as parents, and how did you react when Saif, for example, wanted to become an actor? Was that met with oh no's, or, well, it was only natural?
Well, it was never on the card, really, because we kept him, like I said, my private life was very different. Like, I did go to work, and there I gave everything I had. I was absolutely involved in work. But when I came back home, then there was no film talk, nothing. So Saif was really not exposed to that. And he went away very early to a prep school, very early. I probably wouldn't do it that way now. Then he went to Winchester, and then he went to university. So he was quite away from all that. But we used to do those ads, if you remember. And Saif did one ad with us, and then the phone started ringing, and he got excited. And so there was no... So obviously there was this... I remember once I came back, and he was from work, and he was in front of the mirror, and he was trying to pull his eyelashes off, because they thought he'd seen me taking my false eyelashes off. So he was trying to do that. So there was a lot of, I guess, influence somewhere. And when I remember I was dubbing for Griha Praveshan, there was this baby in between. And he got so jealous of that. Who's that baby there with you? So I don't know. I mean, but there was no... And in fact, when he was young and when he was growing up, and you know how people would come and pinch the baby's cheek and said, what will you become when you grow up, an actor or a cricketer? And he would say, I want to be a hockey player.
Well, India could have used one of those.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you married, you moved into a joint family, right? Or was that...
No, we actually, immediately after we got married, we bunked. We bunked for 15 years, 16 years.
Oh, wow, that's...
I got married in 68. I continued to stay in Bombay and continued to work. And Tiger was also playing cricket for a while. So we didn't go to Delhi. That happened in 84 when Amma started keeping indifferent health. And Tiger being the only male, son. So he had to, we had to go then because Amma really couldn't cope. So till then we had been bunking.
What was the experience like of moving away from, a cinematic career, a coupled life of, between your two professions?
Living alone and then going back to where many people stayed is always difficult. I remember when I was, I had this hairdresser who also lived in town, as we call it, because Carmichael Road. So we used to do this 45, 50 minutes drive every day, going and coming. And she would be full of her mother-in-law. She would say, you know, aaj ye hua, aaj wo hua. I said, you guys are so petty. Can you not sort this out like a normal human beings? And then I had somebody on the 7th floor because I was in a terrace flat in Carmichael Road. So she would come up, you know, and I said, oh God, because I'd come back from work and I'd see her sitting on my sofa with a swollen face. So I said, now what's happened? She said, oh, she did this and she did that. And I would say, well, again, you know, come on. You know. So then when I went, I was desperately trying to remember what was our conversation about. What were the hints they were telling me? What should I
What's
not
the
do?
advice to remember?
What is the advice? But that's not quite fair. Amma was very nice and she was lovely. But yes, there are little things that happen. The staff creates a lot of problem because they would say, you know, Amma was very fond of roses and I liked doing flower arrangement. So, and I would be very, you know, good about this. So I would take one rose from here and one rose from somewhere else. And they would say with a straight face, if something happened to the plant, they said, oh, Begum Saab ne to wo sab roses nikal liye the. So, you know, so the staff, you know, I could kill them, really. And then continuously create. And cars, although one had a few cars, but they would all disappear when it was time to collect the children from home. So then I started hiding car keys. So, you know, those little tips that you need, which I said, you know, Meena must have told me, Lata must have told me. But, yeah, but on the whole, it was all right.
So coming now to, and I know we joked about Temur right in the beginning, but you have, of course, both of you, Tiger and you, lived intensely in the public eye. Then your children and the professions they chose, then the partners they chose. And now Temur is, I believe that there is a rate for pictures on social media, and the highest in the country is Temur, right?
No, I have no idea.
How do you feel about your
I feel
grandchild?
so naive because I'm not in any of these Facebook, whatever. So I had no idea. I thought there must be a special category for children where they are, you know, rated and where he's topping the list. So apparently, end of last year, he was about to be dethroned from his, yeah, and by this Priyanka Chopra wedding. So then I realized that he's competing with
Priyanka Chopra's wedding.
Priyanka Chopra. So I had no idea. I mean, I was kind of slightly taken aback and speechless. But
how do you feel about it?
I can't imagine grown-ups really doing this.
But how do you feel about the fact
I have learned from Sara Ali Khan has taught me, watching her interviews. I would have said something else had I not seen her interviews earlier. Now I would say that you have to live with the media and you have to accept this. So that's a lesson she's taught me.
On the note of Sarah, because she recently said that she shares a very special, a unique relationship with you, will you tell us how you feel about your granddaughter acting?
She's always wanted. I mean, she always had this talent. When she was growing up, she was to be a very precocious and talking, you know, 19 to the dozen. And once she sat in front of me and called random numbers. And whoever would answer on the other end, and she would say in proper Hindi, which I can't, say that, you know, you won a prize and this is what it is, and carried on like that. And I mean, my eyes would get bigger and bigger, and then say something funny like, why don't you run after it, and that kind of thing, and put the phone. She carried on, and she was, 5 or something at that time. And then I remember when Amitabh had come to visit Saif in the hospital, and she was taking him on and saying, like Mamo's, you know, gender, like the male gender is this and the female gender is this. And at one point he said something and Amitabh said, no, I don't think that word exists, you know. So you know, he had so much confidence. And I remember we were shooting at Virud's set where she had come. And I think there was a scene when I'm rushing and Amitabh is trying to hold me or something like that. And so Amitabh said, you know, please don't be so heroic because this is not a Ray film. This was reported back at home to Saif that they call me Badi Amma. that Amitabh was rude to Badi Amma. I said, excuse me, this is our professional relationship. I've known the man for years and he's all right, you know. But
Well, I'm glad
she
to know that
objected.
Amitabh's all right.
So I tell you, she had a lot of qualities then, and I think she's speaking very well, and all her interviews I've watched, and I feel she is just wonderful, and the media likes her. She knows how to not what she says, but what she says and how she says it. So I think she's clever girl.
And her as my entry point to contemporary actresses and contemporary cinema. You said earlier that it's a good time for cinema.
Absolutely.
Is it a good time for women in cinema?
Yes, I think, well, we still have a long way to go. As I said, women can't have it all. Yeah, it is a long way to go. But yes, I mean, Piku, for instance, once upon a time, people would laugh. I mean, how can a woman look after the father? Not possible, you know? Nobody would accept it. So that and Dam Laga Ke Haisa, Masan, Bareli Ki Barfi, I mean, you name it. There are so many films that are really wonderful and refreshing to watch on this.
And also women as directors. Do you find something?
I mean, Zoya's Gully Boy is like changed the vocabulary of the cinema. And lately, Razi, the Gully Boy, and so many other films. Right now, I can't think of.
I think you mentioned even Lipstick Under My Burqa, for example.
Yes,
Alankrita.
Okay, that's okay. But there are other. But there are many women directors who have come up and doing much better work.
What is it about the female gaze as directors that you find interesting or different
I think women are anyway very particular about details. I think they get the details right somehow. And that is one thing. I don't know about the female gaze and male gaze now because it's quite gender neutral now, because once upon a time men were a bit like men. But now... Yeah, like Bertrand Russell, wasn't it, who said that the perfect man is half woman, half God, and half something else. I can't remember.
In other words, one and a half.
So there is but there is no man in him. So, yeah. So now I think they're quite sensitive to each other and the way they respect each other and take orders from a female. So it's not like that anymore. It's very democratic and a good place to work. And the audience has changed. Audience has an appetite for a different kind of genre, a different kind of films. So that has opened up a lot. And the problem is now that now we are not going to the cinema, because once upon a time, again in our time, there were queues, because there was no other way of seeing. There was no television, there was nothing else, and people had to queue up to see a film. And now we have so many options. So the cinema is coming to you. So you have the small screen, you have medium screen, you've got that screen, you're surrounded by screens. So where cinema is going, I'm not sure. Bahubali or spectacular films will do very well, or different kind of films, the intimate films. People would rather stay and watch Netflix. So, but I still feel the charm of the big screen, is different.
So what for you is the enduring charm of the big screen?
Because it's everything, because when the room darkens and the screen is there is that intimate feeling of sharing with the crowd. The experience is quite different when you're at home, when your phone is ringing. And so it's like when you're doing that, you sit forward and sit back mode. So that sit back mode is what you get in the cinema, the entertainment value, yeah.
Thank you, Sharmila ji, because I think you have given us sit-back mode in real life today. It has been a privilege to hear you speak with both candor and such grace about an incredibly lived life.
I think white hair gives you the license.
And on that note, thank you. Thank you for being a wonderful audience.